Today, I decided to talk a little bit about my diagnosis with ADHD and how I got there and what it's meant to me. Um, I was diagnosed this past summer, I guess. I was almost 48. And so, any of you who know the way this works, I've had it my whole life. It's not something that just appears as you're an adult. Um, but back in the 70s and 80s, girls didn't get ADHD. That was just for boys who were hyper. And I was a good student and didn't have any signs that I even, until I started learning about it, would have assumed were ADHD. What I knew about myself was that I was always thinking lots of things. I felt very anxious and concerned about being right and good and perfect at stuff. And also that I would get very bored very easily. I always kind of thought about things a little bit differently. And from that, assumed that I was wrong. I would tell myself that if I'm thinking about, well, surely someone else would have thought of this. I can't possibly, this can't possibly be the solution. And I realized that I did a lot of people pleasing. And some of that, I don't know, I judged myself a lot. And plus I have this like outward appearance of having my shit together, but inside I constantly was like, I don't have my, my desk looks like it's neat, but shit is just shoved into folders and there's just chaos. And but then people would comment on how organized I was, and then I felt even more like a fraud. So but I was coping and I was doing fine-ish, I guess. And then the pandemic hit a year into me starting my business. Initially, I was like, I felt like I was going into a depression, which I had dealt with a little bit before. So I went to my doctor and got, started working on that, and things were, okay, or at least not any worse than it seemed for anybody else dealing with the pandemic and trying to work and have a child and, no school and childcare and craziness. And but then it just kind of kept getting worse. And finally, I was actually researching for my son about ADHD, and thanks to algorithms, I started seeing posts about women and adults and how it presents, particularly in women and adults. And I was like, that sounds really familiar. I had no idea. So then I started doing a little bit of researching, and then I went to talk to my primary doctor, got a consultant with a psychiatrist. They did the whole assessment, and sure enough, I had it. And now understanding the way it presents in girls and women, looking back, yes, I definitely had it. I was a horrible nail chewer, which I now realize, like, I couldn't stop. I don't do it now, but I've replaced it with lots of other like fidgety things. I'm always doodling or something that I never considered hyper activity. That was just like doodling, but then it makes it look like I'm not paying attention. And sometimes it's really the opposite. It's the only way I can pay attention. So for me, getting diagnosed was like this sort of relief. Not that my life has gotten easier or anything since then, but I'm much kinder to myself. And I don't know why it took a diagnosis to get me to be kinder with myself. I mean, maybe some of it is also aging and maturity and understanding life a little bit better. But now that I recognize what is just part of the way my brain works, it's so much easier to get past it. Like now I recognize that there are days that I am just not going to be able to get things done. My brain is just, I know there's a list of things to do. I want to do them. Like part of my brain is like, you should do those. But the part of my brain that has control, like, yeah, we're not doing that today. And I used to just try to force it, and that never got anywhere. And so I would then end up sitting at my desk trying to do the thing that I was not doing and still not doing it. And then the day would be over and I'd feel like shit about myself. And now I know I can recognize, okay, this is one of those days. And I, can either try to use a technique that I've learned to get through it, or I can be like, okay, I'm going to accept that this is one of those days, and I'm going to do what I need to do on this day. I'm starting to learn what works for me and what doesn't. And one of the things that's great is that because of what I do, and I have my life, my work works around my life, I can build those in, and I'm usually not too far behind. And even if I am, honestly, the deadline, that is a good, great, wonderful motivator for me. So yeah. So on the one hand, I'm kind of mad that I didn't get this diagnosis when I was younger. I guess, there's nobody to really be mad at. It's not like my parents knew. It's more society and how everything is kind of put under this lens of what works for males. It's not only in this, it's in medicine altogether. It's in seatbelt design. It's in, like, the world is designed with the standard person being a male. And it's just different for us. I'm also learning that I'm probably going to experience symptoms even differently as the next few years come on, because perimenopause and menopause, yay, they affect ADHD. And so I'm going to be learning a lot about how I am best going to be able to work. But one of the things that has been super, super helpful for me to learn is about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I think that's what it's called. It's something like that. But people with ADHD have a heightened, many people with ADHD have a heightened sensitivity to rejection. And so it makes them more likely to be people pleasers. It makes them just more scared to put themselves out there, because rejection, or even perceived rejection, or even like the width of maybe rejection or the fear of rejection, is heightened beyond what it is for neurotypical people. I know everybody has, imposter syndrome at some time, and I've got something I want to say about that later. But for people who are neurodivergent, that can be heightened, and it makes it even more of a struggle. And so, we say yes to things we shouldn't say yes to. And I know everybody does that, but ADHD people, and women in particular, I think, tend to do that more often. It is more of a default response. And plus we have really bad senses of what we can accomplish in specific times. So, like, yes, I can do that because I have time to do that in my brain, where time works differently. But in the real world, where time works in a completely different way, I don't have time for that. What was I thinking? Yeah, so this is very rambly, I know, but this is also my brain on ADHD. I don't take medication every day. Some days I do, but I prefer not to. If I know it's going to be a day that I can mostly get through without it, I prefer not to take it. So anyway, since being diagnosed, I have met or discovered that there are a lot of women in my life who got diagnosed late. And it's funny because when I hear that they were diagnosed, I'm like, that makes sense. And because it's not all of my female friends, but it is some of the ones that I've had the deepest connections with, that have just got me from the beginning. And none of us knew that that's what we had, but they're some of the best friends I have, and the people I am really close to. And we're pretty freaking awesome, even though our brains are a little bit weird compared to other people's. So if you've had a late diagnosis, or maybe you're just suspecting that you have it, Google it. I can't diagnose you, but I will say it's probably more common than you thought. And yeah, if you have any questions, or if you were diagnosed late and have any experiences to share about how it affected your life, I would love to hear it. Anyway, that's it for today.